Welcome, quiet soul. You always hear what others miss. You're the listener history has been waiting for. So today you are Charles. Not a radiant king in a royal portrait, but a deformed, lonely child lost among cold stone walls, with nothing but flickering candles to stretch your shadow even further. Even in sleep you find no peace. Every breath feels like a haunting. Every slight movement comes with glances of pity or fear from the servants who circle you. You remember vividly one cold night when your mother Queen Mariana sat quietly under the dim yellow light, her shoulders shivering as if pierced by the night wind itself. She tried to stifle her sobs as she hurriedly wrote a note to the only priest she trusted, poor boy. God let him live one more day if you can. Even that last bit of warmth from your mother you only feel as cold tears soaking into your heart as she believes you're already asleep and no one can hear her desperate prayers. But you always hear them. You hear it even when your room is pitch black while the wind outside sweeps down endless corridors trailing hundreds of shadows behind it, and as rumours of the bewitched king swirl through every stone in the palace. You hear every whisper he's having another seizure again. Careful, keep your voice down, don't let the king hear. You know exactly how different you are. At every meal you have to swallow everything whole, as if swallowing a silence you could never really chew through. Here between dim light and thick darkness, even as a king you're nothing more than a small child trapped in your own body, hearing every curse and every fear from those around you, and knowing deep down you're just a shadow cast upon your own throne. Maybe out there many people still believe being born ordinary, living a simple life is nothing to be proud of. But do you know at least when you're ordinary you have the right to be yourself? You're free to feel free to make mistakes, free to choose happiness or sadness without worrying about anyone's judgment. Here glory is nothing but a thin layer of gold, covering loneliness. Every emotion, success or failure you have is defined by the gaze and the stories of others. Sometimes, just being ordinary is a privilege that a crowned child can never reach. And before we get into the story, I really want to know, did anything about this video strike a chord or stay with you? Leave a comment down below. Who knows, maybe your thoughts will become a hidden treasure that the whole community wants to discover. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share or subscribe. Sometimes just one click can help spread 100 more interesting stories. So are you ready? Let's begin. And I hope you'll find a reason to smile before you drift off to sleep. But how could you ever truly smile once you realise that from the very first cry you made at birth, everything had already been set up for you as a trap with no way out? You are the product of a family tree that's really just a single twisted trunk, where every branch wraps around the others in desperation and obsession with power. Your father married his own niece. Your mother was your father's aunt. Your grandmother was also his maternal grandmother. The bloodline everyone is so proud to keep pure is in truth nothing but a loop of disease, weakness and fear, repeated generation after generation. You never got to hear fairy tales about children growing up healthy in royal gardens. Instead, you grew up haunted by memories of children who never made it past their first birthday names, that survive only as footnotes in a genealogical chart. 30% of your cousins died as infants. Half of them didn't survive to their 10th birthday. You aren't just a deformed child, you're a living statistic of a dynasty choking itself to death. People tell you about future historians like the scientist Alvarez 2009, who used numbers to decode your tragedy. Your inbreeding coefficient is so high, it's the same as being the child of a brother and sister. You don't need genetic math. Just looking in the mirror shows you the consequences. A twisted face, eyes always tired, pale skin, a jaw that juts out and won't close, and a heavy head that always feels ready to collapse. You still remember the cold lines written in letters and reports by Dr. Juan de la Corte. No comfort, not a shred of hope, just descriptions of sudden seizures, days of chronic diarrhea, a body that never had the strength to grow like a normal child. His Majesty cannot chew, only swallow whole. No nutrition is useful for a body that refuses to grow, he once wrote. In the cruel cycle of power and blood, you never had a chance to choose for yourself. You were born into a destiny already written. The only difference is the crown on your head can't save you from the fate of being a weak child among the countless souls of your ancestors. And that's why you've had to learn to live with the masks painted for you, even when you can no longer recognize your own real face beneath the makeup of the court. You know too well the truth behind those majestic, powerful portraits that painter Juan Carreño de Miranda was ordered to paint for you. Each canvas held a world of opposites out there. The people got to admire a king with broad shoulders, a full face, a determined gaze, while in reality you lay bedridden limbs, frail skin pale and a constant fever burning through your body. You still remember all those long days when all you could do was stare at the light coming through the curtains, while outside were the footsteps of the painter, the whispers of staff, the sighs of frustration as they tried to retouch the truth. The painter was forced to revise the portraits over and over. The royal family must never appear weak to the public. Every brushstroke, every new draft was another layer distorting the truth. Then one day, you accidentally found a letter from Carreño de Miranda to his close friend, a letter he never expected you to see. In it, he bitterly confessed, 3 times I was forced to repaint his face because it was too real. They don't want to see sadness, exhaustion, or the hollow stare of a dying king. Here the truth is a luxury no one can afford. You hold the letter in your trembling hands, not out of anger, but because you feel so utterly alien to the image of yourself on those cold stone walls. Every time you look at your own portrait, you see a stranger, a face full of vitality eyes, shining with pride, while inside all you really feel is pain, fear, and a kind of despair no one even knows how to name. You don't blame the painter. You just realise that you and this entire dynasty have been living for so long in a room full of broken mirrors, each shard reflecting a different kind of falsehood. You suddenly realise you've always been judged, narrated, or described in someone else's voice. Every portrait, every medical report, every diplomatic letter, each one turns you into a story told by others, never your own truth. If you lived today, could you withstand the pressure of social media anti-fans? Endless comments labelling you a meme, a scandal, or simply the biggest loser in history? Maybe you'd be a reluctant KOL for an entire generation, famous not for any accomplishment, but for becoming the symbol of a distorted tragedy passed around as entertainment. Sometimes you wonder which is your real face, and has anyone in this world ever truly wanted to know you aside from cold judgments and glances slipping over portraits and medical files? Only the night dares to look straight at that truth. And only when the last candle goes out, when there are no more footsteps echoing in the stone corridors, do you finally return to yourself, bare, fragile, and alone to the core. You spend endless nights wide awake, tracing the cracks on the ceiling, as if counting pains you haven't even named. Each night the monk's diary soaks up your silent tears, trembling across the pages. Lord, why must you make me live forever in this body? Night is also when memories of exorcism ceremonies come back to haunt you. You cannot forget the look of worry and desperation in your mother's eyes as she handed you over to the priests, her faint hope that some ritual might free you from this terrible curse. You were tied up for 3 days and nights amid prayers, incense, and freezing holy water, but no miracle came, and everyone could only bow their heads in helplessness at your condition. Sometimes even daylight can't save you from the darkness. You remember vividly the royal banquet recorded in a letter by the French ambassador Count Gramont to Paris. The young king could not utter a word, could not chew even a piece of bread. The whole room went silent from shame, then quickly grew noisy again to cover up the truth. Moments like those gnaw at your soul, not because of the physical pain, but because you feel like you'll always be a child trapped in a grown man's body. You wear a robe, a crown, sit on a throne beneath countless stairs, but you never really belong anywhere, never truly get to decide even a single breath of your own life. And every night all that remains are sighs, tears no one ever sees, and a question that hangs endlessly in your heart. Does God hear the prayers of a child lost in the shadows of this throne? If he does hear, perhaps he has chosen to remain silent, watching all that unfolds as you try your best to play the role of a man, a king, a husband, the last hope of your dynasty. You've gone through 2 marriages, both failures, both only adding more despair to shoulders already bent by the burdens of generations. Marie-Louise d'Orléans, the beautiful, vibrant French princess, entered the Spanish court with eyes full of hope, but it wasn't long before those eyes were filled only with darkness and tears. You never forget the bitter words she wrote in her memoir, "I came here to be the wife of a bloodline, not the wife of a man." You remember every moment she turned away when you tried to touch her hand, the way she looked at you with nothing but pity and distance. And then one night, as darkness filled the room, you heard her sobbing in the next chamber. Her voice choked with anguish, cried out to her maid, "I live beside a husband, but why do I still feel like a widow?" Do you understand that feeling, to be the wife of a living man whose heart and body never truly existed? You lay there, only a cold wall separating you, yet feeling the distance greater than the space between 2 countries. You couldn't utter a word of comfort, couldn't tell her you understood that pain, because you yourself were desperate, powerless against your own fate. After Marie-Louise passed away in sorrow, Maria Anna of Neuburg was brought in as a cold political solution. But this marriage proved even more tragic. Maria Anna grew more distant, more cold with every passing day. No child was ever born, no new blood joined the family line, and once again you heard the bitter whispers in the royal chambers, echoing through the empty corridors, each one digging deeper into your humiliation. The queen is barren, the dynasty is doomed. They married twice and both times failed. This dynasty is certain to end with him. You quietly watch the cold faces, the judging eyes. No one expects anything from you anymore. No one believes you can save yourself, let alone your family. All you can do is sit silently on the throne, powerless, as you watch every last hope yours and everyone else's crumble to dust. You know all too well that in this world the greatest pain is not dying, but having to live on forever in helplessness and despair, in a body and heart that never truly belong to you. And so when death finally approaches, you become little more than a wraith, a shell that still breathes a moving shadow in an empty, gloomy room. In those last days your body swells and weakens to the point where you can only sit up for an hour or two each day. The French ambassador recorded it bluntly in a letter home to Paris. The king is nothing but a ghost, his legs swollen, his skin deathly pale, his gaze empty and soulless, his tongue so swollen he can't utter a single word. We are witnessing a dynasty end in the cruelest way imaginable. You have heard every word known, every truth, and you understand that the only thing you'll leave behind in this world is not a throne, not a continuing bloodline, but your own frail, deformed body. You can already picture the scene as they perform your autopsy, the cold, sharp words that will be written into a shocking report. The king's heart was the size of a peppercorn, incapable of pumping blood through his body. His head was filled with waterproof that his intellect had long since left him, and his testicles were black as coal, a merciless symbol of extinction. This is not a royal body, but an indictment of an entire dynasty. You imagine how these words will spread through the court, how the stories will whisper across Europe. You know Paris, London, Vienna will all become battlegrounds of intrigue, everyone holding their breath, waiting for a will to be signed by your trembling hand. In those final moments, as your feeble breath prepares to leave your body, you whisper painfully, despairingly, but with a strange sense of peace. There is nothing left, no one left to give to. Only the curse of blood remains. You close your eyes for the first and last time. You truly feel relief, because you know that at last your helplessness is about to be set free. You are about to become part of the past, a warning for anyone who believes that power and bloodlines can overcome the harsh fate of being human. But as you let go of your crown, the legacy you leave behind is not a glorious page in history, but a chaotic abyss that no one in this palace or out in the streets of Madrid could ever have truly foreseen. The will signed by your trembling hand spreads like a decree of fate. The crown of Spain will go to Philip of Anjou, a young man of French blood carrying the ambitions of both King Louis XIV and all the powers waiting to tear apart the land you once called home, and overnight all of Europe erupts in alarm. News from the palace is whispered by envoys in darkened rooms in Paris, London, Vienna, Amsterdam. Every international hall becomes a battlefield of false handshakes and quietly redrawn maps on the chessboard of power, where your name Charles is now just an excuse for a new wave of bloody competition. In that storm, you're no longer the centre of the story. Out there, Madrid is shrouded in uneasy darkness, and for the first time you realise your people do not weep for you. Not a single soul stands before the palace gates calling the name of the king. They gather in the squares before churches around makeshift fires, whispering and crying out of fear. An old woman, hair white as snow, nervously fingering her rosary, eyes red and swollen, raises her rough voice in the hush of the crowd. We used to pray for the king to live. Now we pray only for peace, dear Lord. And you hear it clearly in the despair of that old woman and the crowd, an undeniable truth. Your end, a child of endless power, cycles, bloodline, obsessions, loneliness, and sickness, does not end in a quiet death, but erupts as a great flood that sweeps away millions of lives, burning down everything that was ever called glory. You suddenly realize that you never truly ruled anything except your own fears, and the fears of an entire empire locked in the prison of its own past. You also understand that from now on those cycles will repeat in different forms. Today a war for the throne, tomorrow a fear of losing power, losing identity, losing faith in change. The legacy you leave behind is not gold or a crown, but a vast mirror reflecting the collapse of everything once believed to be eternal royal bloodlines, ancient laws, and the mistaken belief that clinging to the same circle will keep the world from ever changing. And in that final moment, as all of Europe holds its breath waiting for an uncertain future, you realise no one truly wins. There is only tragedy repeating itself from the heart of a child who once dreamed of a living reaching out to every corner of human history. You quietly ask yourself if time could be turned back, if you were not locked inside those thick walls of prejudice and bloodline obsession. Would you have the courage to break that endless cycle? Would you dare open the door to your own chamber? Choose light instead of trembling in the dark? Choose true life instead of clinging to a purity that was nothing more than a curse, rooted deep in the minds of generations? Suddenly you no longer feel like a king trapped in a diseased body. You look out through the window of history and realise that out there so many people are also caught in seemingly unbreakable loops. Those family trees that are really just trunks still exist, not just among royalty, but in ordinary families, in businesses, organisations and communities that fear difference and cling tightly to obsessions about purity about us and the outsider. You want to send one last message, not just to those who have held power, but to anyone who has ever felt lonely imprisoned in a cage of their own making. Don't let the cycle of power, of prejudice, of isolation keep repeating itself forever. Don't be afraid to open the door, don't be afraid to be different, don't lock yourself or those you love away just because of the ghosts of the past. Only by stepping out of that familiar circle can you truly know you're alive. Truly reach out to the world and to the hearts of others. If I, a Charles once helpless and forgotten, could choose again, I would not cling to pure blood, would not live in a room full of shattered mirrors, would not wear that cold crown forever. I would choose to break the cycle, to throw open the door, to walk toward the light, even if what's out there is unknown. And you, the one listening to this story, if there's ever a night when you feel lost, trapped in the loops of your own life, just try for once to let go of fear. Try to smile just a little. Then open your door to the wind, to a new conversation, to a secret that's never been told, or simply to the uniqueness of who you are. Wishing you a peaceful night, gentle enough to lull all your worries to sleep deep enough for you to dream of a new cycle, one without tragedy, only the light of understanding and courage. Good night, fellow traveller with stories that never repeat quite the same, because you alone will write a different ending for yourself.